What's up, YouTube? A little bit of a story time here about my first, I ain't gonna say first real relationship, but first serious relationship I had when I was in my 20s when I was gonna get married. As some of you might know right now, I'm currently married, but years and years ago, almost, Lord, 15 years ago now, a little bit around there, about 15 years ago, I was engaged. And obviously that didn't work out. Well, not obviously, but to make it a short point of it, that didn't work out. So I just want to go into some details on why that didn't work out. Before we get started, guys, if you can do me a favor, hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you like what we're talking about here. We'd like to share some of the ins and out of modern dating, modern relationship advice, things of that nature. But anyway, let's dive into the story. So years ago, when I was a younger guy, when I think I was like 20 something, 22, fresh out the military, I started dating a girl, and it started off wrong, if I would say that, because what we tried to do, we tried to turn. Well, I know what I did. I tried to turn what was essentially a purely physical situation into something more. And to be honest, I don't think we were ever compatible beyond the physical, right? So, I made the cardinal mistake of trying to make something more. I mean, and on the surface, I think I did that because, she seemed like such a good girl. She had some good qualities to her. So, and I enjoyed the physical aspect so much that I wanted to do more than just that, right? And sometimes, and I think at the time I really, maybe dating a few girls, but nothing too serious. Nothing worth holding on to, right? So I think it was like a couple girls I was dealing with, nothing major. So, here comes this girl. I think we met at work. Yeah, we did meet at work. And, I think I was very young. She was, out of college, hadn't been out of college that long, and I was fresh out the military. So we were young, kind of just starting on our own lives, kind of getting to know the world a little bit. And, we decided to try this thing. At least I wanted to push the thing in. And the reason I said I made a mistake was she really wasn't into it. As far as the relationship thing, she had a lot of red flags that I ignored, but, I really wanted to push the issue. And during the relationship, let me caveat this thing. So, being that she was in college, she thought she had seen a lot of the world, and being that I was in the military, I know that I had seen a lot of the world, right? And I think sometimes people in college believe that they have a monopoly on experience, right? And people in the military will tell you, we have a lot more monopoly on experience because we're subjected to the whole range of adulthood, right? Because while you are surrounded by a lot of young people when you're in the military, especially at a young age. I joined when I was 17, even before my 18th birthday. I was in the military with everybody, right? So all ages, all backgrounds. There was no sugarcoating things. Everything was as real as it was supposed to be, right? So that gave us an opportunity to experience a lot of different things. And of course, when you put us in a random city in America, now you're not only dealing with the people you're in the military with, you're also dealing with the civilians outside of the military, right? So you're dealing with everybody. And I think sometimes, the college life is a little sheltered because a lot of your friend group and a lot of people you interact with are, around your same age, within a year or two, right? So I say all that and I bring that all in to perspective because she at the time thought she had the world figured out, if that makes sense. And I knew she did. And I think I did her a disservice because I was a lot nicer than I normally was in a relationship. Because at the time, being in the military, I had done a lot of different things, dated a lot of different girls. And for the most part, I wasn't always the nicest guy. And, at the time, the way I was dealing with women, I wasn't overly concerned about what they wanted versus what I wanted. I was kind of out there for myself. So, dealing with her, I was like, okay, I'm going to be a nice guy, blase, blase, blase. And, so she got to see a side of me she got to see the good guy portion of me. And, for lack of a better word, the simping portion of me. Like, I wasn't spending a ton of money on her. I didn't have money like that. I had enough money to, go out and things like that, but I didn't have enough money to really trick off on her. But what I did was I made her the center of attention. What I lacked in money, showering her with money, I showered her with attention. And so in her mind, that had her believing that, I was just all about her. And the truth be told, I was. When I was in a relationship with her, I was all about her. But one thing she didn't realize is that, out of sight, out of mind. Because we go through these little spats before we became, boyfriend and girlfriend. It was, kind of just dating. Nothing official but unofficial. Whenever we go through these spats, I talk to other women. I didn't have a problem with that, but I didn't see the need to throw that in her face. So whenever she circled the block, and that's the other thing, I never really circled the block. She would circle the block, I guess, seeing that the grass wasn't greener, and that was mistake number 2. I would let her come back, right? And, I let her come back for a multitude of reasons. A, like I said, the physical thing was great. And B, I never find anything while we're on a break that was worthwhile me, not dealing with her, if that makes sense. So I'd always go through this process of, in and out until we became official. But these are the red flags that men should pay attention to. If a woman is always willing to, bail on you at the first sign of, issues, then do yourself a favor and don't let her back when she comes back. I think every time that I let her come back, that made her, if I'm being honest, lose respect for me each and every time, right? And you'll see why when I continue to finish the story. So I had told myself that, okay, we haven't really been together, so let me see if I can get through a certain period of time without any issues, and then I'll make it official. And we made it through that time. It was a great year, right? For example, it was a great year, no issues, no complaints. And so at the end of that year, backing up, guys, parking. At the end of that year, I decided to make it official as my girlfriend. And then from there, we dated a little bit longer. And I think not too long after that, I made her, I proposed to her. Now, all during this time, that year, it was a good year. I'm not going to complain and say it wasn't. But there were so many red flags prior to that year that I should have made a decision to cut her off, right? Because there was things she would say and things she would do. And sometimes it'd be like pulling teeth, dealing with her. And, I still, press forward in the relationship because I was like, okay, I want to lock this down. And that was the other thing. Because I came from a traditional background, I assumed that, the end all be all was getting married. And, at this particular point, we were living with each other. We've been dating each other exclusively. I was like, okay, let me go ahead and make this thing official, right? Let me, as the old folks would say, let me make an honest woman out of her, right? So I proposed, some family tragedies happened in her family. And we start growing distance. I'm like almost immediately after I proposed, right? And at the time, I'm thinking it's because of, her own personal things going on and, some of the changes that came along with that. So I'm justifying her behavior because of the things going on and not seeing for what it is. Me putting that ring on her finger made her realize that, hey, I haven't explored other men as much as I wanted to, or I still have issues with my ex that I need to deal with. And that was another thing, there was issues with the ex when we were, just, dating that I ignored or, didn't take heed to that red flag, right? And so fast forward, I propose, things get a little shaky. We ended up breaking up, right? And she came to me, and it was like, she didn't think they were working out, blah, 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 blah. And, we ended up calling off the engagement. And, I kind of could see it coming. So I wasn't that surprised. I remember the day of, I just knew that, she was going to be on that BS when I got home. So I already prepared myself. So I made sure I got me some good food, picked me out a show to watch. And the whole time I'm sitting in our apartment, and she's talking to me about breaking up. And I'm just sitting there. I'm not sad about it or anything, because I've already, accepted what was going to happen, right? So, I make sure I get me some good food. I'm eating and watching my show, and she's in the kitchen just talking to me, and I'm in the room just listening. And I'm like, okay, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. And, she's kind of shocked by it. I guess she thought it was going to be a little bit more intense. I was like, I give her a hug, wish her the best, and she left the apartment. And, the very next day, she kept coming back to the apartment, and this is what I want put emphasis on this. I didn't have any ill will towards her at that point, because she hadn't done anything that I knew of that would cause me to be harsh. It was just like, okay, this obviously isn't for me, but I'm not going to force anyone, and I'll speak that to any guy. I'm not going to force anyone to be with me that doesn't want to be with me, right? I'm at the time, I'm working at different offices. Like, I think I was working for a bank at the time, and in like a call center environment. And if anybody's ever been in a call center environment, there's girls galore. So at this particular time, I'm surrounded by women 24/7, right? And I'm younger. I think I was like 27 at the time. So I'm 27, surrounded by women, and you want to break up. That's perfect. If that's what you want to do. I'm like, it's how many women that I'm turning down on a day-to-day basis just by being a male in the call center. Not like I'm some special guy, but it's just the nature of those type of environments. It was very little men compared to how many women were there. So we go our separate ways. She's still kind of in the apartment, but I'm not in the apartment because it was, at least I think it was, I was paying the rent, but I think the apartment was in her name, because she was like, an apartment manager at the time. So we got a great deal because of that. So, it's not like I can kick her out if I try to stay there because it's in her name. But she kind of moves out, and she comes over there every now and then, but not enough to just be chilling, especially when I'm there, right? She might come. I think she ended up telling me that she would come during the day when I wasn't there, and kind of just like to get a break from. I think she moved back with her mom, and so she'd come just get a break from her mom's house, and just when I'm not there. But whenever I would come home, she'd already be gone. And sometimes she'd come in there and she would just clean up the apartment, and just randomly. So I'd have women come over there from time to time. And this is all important. So I'm kind of like, living my life. I'm like, okay, we're not together. When you want to do your thing, go do your thing. I'm gonna do my thing. I kind of move on because, like I said, everything leading up to us breaking up, it was kind of preparing me for that particular incident, right? So, as time progresses in that short, after we break up, she feels that she thought that I was going to wait for her. And this is what this whole thing was. She thought that I was going to wait for her, that she can go out and test the field, test the waters, and then circle back to me. That made me realize how much ignoring red flags, changing yourself for a person in a relationship can have a detrimental effect. And, I could blame her for everything that went wrong in the relationship, but I think that me being a sucker is the biggest blame, right? I can't point any finger at anybody but myself, because I was a sucker. I allowed her to kind of walk all over me when it came to a lot of things. And I felt that, well, she's not violating certain principles, like, cheating, doing things like that I don't have to fight for these things, right? And I always was so concerned about me saying the wrong thing, because honestly I thought I was a jerk prior to us getting together. So I had worked so hard to not be a jerk, and I don't know, I was kind of a little bit obsessive over her as far as the relationship and wanting to spend time with her, but not super crazy. Like, I didn't stalk her or anything like that. Not like, oh, I gotta show up. Like, when we'd have our breaks, she would drive by my house, but I would never drive by hers. I didn't care because I'm like I never wanted to put myself in a situation to see something I didn't want to see. So I let her live her life. I didn't track her down or nothing like that. And but my biggest mistake was, like I said, letting her circle back and having her believe that she was the end all be all in my life without her reciprocating that energy. It's okay, I think, for someone to be the end all be all if they're also your end all. You're their end all be all. And she said something to me. She was like, "Well, I just thought that and this is months after we broke up, or 6 months after we broke up. I just thought that we'd circle back, and that I could always come back." And that it just shocked me. And I'm like, I made her believe by my lack of having hard standards and hard lines in the sand that she could do whatever she wanted to do, and I would always be there waiting for her, and that I would be that sucker for her. Like I said, this is a quick story time. I learned from that particular situation to always be yourself and always stand on your principles and your morals, and don't cave for anyone. Don't let anyone make you feel like you have to give in order for them to be with you. And that's what I did in that relationship. After leaving that relationship, I was able to make better decisions when it came to the women I dealt with. And I learned, look, be yourself 24/7. If you're a jerk, be a jerk. And it's a reason, because there's a reason you're being a jerk. Either you're being a jerk if you're a reasonable person, right? You're being a jerk because that person is not garnering the affection that they should, right? They're not living up to a certain standard. And that's what I was doing. Like, I would be jerks to people who weren't being the best people, if that makes sense. Like, I'm not going to, up to prior to her, like, I was like, oh, well, if you're not going to be serious, I'm not going to be serious. If you're not making me want you, then, you're doing crazy stuff and doing everything out there in the streets. You don't get to come home and, not come home, but you don't get to come to me and then expect me to be a sucker for it. And, I turned that particular attribute off when I decided to date my ex-fiancé, and it backfired. So, I was one of those people, like, I didn't ignore red flags. If I saw something that was a red flag, I stood on business. And that's why I encourage everybody, like, if you see red flags, stand on business. Stand on business. Anyway, I just want to give a quick story time. Like I said, guys, if you can hit the like button, it definitely helped me out, or comment if you've had a similar experience or something that stood out to you in my story. If you guys want more details, obviously we're going into more details. I have a couple of stories, from different situations that I've been in that might give you some guys an insight in your current relationships, or just dating in general. Anyway, thanks guys. Have a great one.